Okay, so since a lot of you guys asked for this, I figured I would go ahead and just do it. So in this video, I'm going to go through several different ways we can create a face rig inside of Houdini. So let's get going. Stars, I'm just going to drop a geo node, and I'm going to call this character. And I'm going to jump in. I do FBX character import, so I can import my character. I have this character I got from Mixamo. He's free, so I can include it with the hip file. So let's go ahead and start. This character already has a rig. He's got bones and skeleton, and there's even a little bit of it's like a soccer player's idle animation in there. And if I plug it into the bone deform, you can see the animation in action. So we're not going to be editing any of this. We're going to be doing all of our face rig stuff at the rest pose. So we're going to be going null. I'll call this in face rig, and then out face rig. And all of the face rig stuff is going to happen here, and then it's going to go back into this bone deform with the same capture weights that I came in with. We're really just going to be pulling over the positions data and all that stuff. So everything is going to happen here at the rest, and then that's going to carry over into this bone deform. So we don't have to worry about attaching this face rig to the character, and we can really just focus on the face rig itself. So I'm going to drop this into a subnet, and I'm going to call this subnet face rig. So if I jump inside, then I just do a little cleanup. So there's our in, there's our outs, give myself some space. And now there's a few different ways we could do a face rig. One's not better than the other, they're just different from each other. So for starters, we don't want to be working on the whole mesh, we just want to be working on the face. And since we're splitting apart the mesh, it's probably a good idea here to create an ID attribute. So I'll drop an attribute create, and I'll do @ptnum in the value for it. I'll make it a integer. And this is just so we get this ID attribute that matches the point number. So later on, even if after our deformations the point count is changed, we can still transfer back any attributes back and forth between the rest pose and the deformed pose. Alright, so I'm going to drop a split and try to isolate the head. In this mesh in particular, it's very easy because I just go select 3D connected geometry. His head is already one isolated thing, which I don't know if that worked. Okay, so sometimes in Houdini, the OpenGL freezes in the viewport, and in order to fix it, you have to go up to one of the other tabs, just any of them, the animation editor or the motion effects, and you just flip it real quick forward and back. And that's going to refresh the OpenGL and refresh any weird stuff you're seeing. So now I have the head isolated, and let's start diving in. For starters, I want to go over the blend shapes technique, which is probably the quickest way to do this. Do a topo build, and this is going to let me kind of mess with the geometry a little bit here. If you go up to the top left of this tab here, if you have topo build selected and you hit enter to make sure you're in the state view, you'll get these options up here where I can go brush, smooth, split, edge slide. There's all this other stuff up here. The brush is kind of what I want. And just stating here, the example I'm about to do is going to be very bad. This is really just to show you kind of the basis behind the idea for this method. And the method I'm going to be showing you is the Blendshapes method. So the idea is that we have a bunch of different poses, and then we blend between them. So real quick, I'm going to make him smile. Perfect. Alright, he's perfect. So we're gonna drop a blend shapes, and blend shapes can blend between two shapes that have the same point count. So if I now drag this blend, I can now switch in and out of this smile. So now I'm gonna drop another topo build, plug this in. Now this one, I'm gonna make him frown. And now if I hit this plus here, it gives me another blend, and I can blend between these, and I can mix these together if I really want. It gives you a lot of control over editing your character between poses, which really, I mean, that's what most animation is. It's just a series of poses. And this method is still super relevant. I think in Toy Story, Pixar has something like 2,000 or 3,000 poses for Woody that they can just blend between. And it's a super easy way to get quality animation. But that's the idea behind blend shapes. It's just creating a bunch of different poses. And if I open up PureRef, I can show you maybe a better example of that. The idea is to create a bunch of different poses like these that you can just blend between to get the animation you want. Let's go about actually doing this well. I think we can do a little better than this. And so I deleted those blend shapes, and now we need to start painting some attributes. This is a little bit tedious, but we need to do it. It's part of the process, and it's going to make life a lot easier for us later on, so just bear with it. So we're going to drop down on attribute paint node, and on this node, we're going to go to the attributes tab, and we're going to start listing off a bunch of different isolated areas that we want. So let's do eyebrows, eyelids, nose, ears, jaw, lips, bottom, lips, top. Then I want cheeks probably too. That's fine for right now. So if I go over to the viewport and I hit enter, we can cycle through these up here. First thing I want to do is change this from volume to surface. You have this option for connected only, so you're not accidentally kind of shooting through the geometry. And I also actually real quick want to ensure that this thing is down the center exactly. So I'll go match size and I'll go stash transform, and I don't really care about the y-axis. I'll leave that alone. I really don't care about the z-axis either. I just want to make sure that down the x-axis is perfectly aligned. Let's start painting these masks. So if I hit the first one and I just go eyebrows, right mouse click in the viewport, I have this drop down of kind of what left mouse button does and what middle mouse button does, and I'm just going to use paint for right now. I'm also going to go over to the symmetry tab and I'm going to do enable mirroring, and now when I paint, I don't have to do both sides. Okay, and then I'll smooth. Also a little hotkey for smoothing. If I just am in paint and I hold shift while clicking, that will smooth. If I hold control, it's going to reduce. So you really don't have to use that middle mouse button click. All right, and I really want some deformations where, like, if you imagine you made like an angry face, probably want a lot of stuff happening here. And you don't really get as much emotion out of the ends of the eyebrows. I want to make sure that we're not running into these eyelids. We're going to probably be editing these later anyways, so don't get too crazy about this at the moment. I'll start doing these eyelids now. All I did was click the drop down and select the eyelids. Save. Now we're going to do the nose. You really just kind of want to get the outside here. You're not going to have a whole lot of motion in the nose, but you might get some like wiggle or some sniffles or something like that. So all right, so that's our nose. Save to the ears. Okay, so jaw. Now the way I like to do this one is I like to think of it like a beard. The thickest parts of the beard are going to be down near like the chin strap area. I'll go surface and I'll go connected only so that I'm not accidentally shooting through anything. And there is an inside to this mouth. That's what I'm trying to avoid. A lot of weights down here. And then we want to smooth it kind of up the face. And then we definitely want some pooling on the skin into kind of the cheeks areas. And we'll probably have to come back to this, but for the most part, that's nice. And you'll also probably get a little bit of pool on the lips from your jaw. Let's go lip bottom now. And now is where we need to isolate stuff. So if before this attribute paint, I do a group, on this group, I go base group. I'm going to go inside of this face, and this isn't how you have to do it. You can do this plenty of other ways, but this is just a way that I found worked with this mesh. If I select these four, and then I just start hitting Shift G to grow my group, then eventually it's going to wrap around outside to the lips. And so I can keep growing. If I grow it too much, I can Shift S to shrink the selection. Let's see where his lips are actually at. I think that's probably going to cover all of his lips. So hit enter, call this lips, and then I'm going to drop a visibility node. If I select something in here, it's going to essentially blast it out, but not. If I show you the point counts between these two, before the visibility and after the visibility, it's the same. We're not actually deleting any geometry. We're keeping everything. You can even see this primitives not displayed in 3D. So we're keeping everything, but this just makes it really easy for us if I go non-selected to just show the lips. Now we have that isolated, so we can paint on lips without having to worry about going inside and outside the mesh. I'm actually going to take this one step further, and I'm going to go another group. I'm just going to select some of these top groups, and then select that guy, hold Shift A, and I think that is the top of the lips, so I'll call this lips top, and then I'll also do a group combine. lips bottom. I'm going to do equals, and then I'm going to subtract the lips top out of there so we're sure that this is just lips bottom. I'm going to drop one more visibility node, display, just get the lips bottom shown, and now I'll paint on this. Most of the weights around the actual lips, and then taper off a little bit inside. Again, we'll probably be editing these, so no need to go insane over this stuff. Now we're going to do the lips top, and on this visibility node above, I'm going to go selected primitives, so I'll just basically flip it. Now I can paint the top lips. I'm going to smooth around the edges of the lips just to make those a little bit less influence. Get that kind of crevice. Okay, I think that's the lips, and all we got left is the cheeks now. This guy, going to go ahead, expose primitives, and I'm just going to expose everything. So now we have the whole head back. All right, so I'm actually good with that. Go ahead and make this a little bit cleaner. All right, so now that I have this cleaned up a little bit, let's actually start making some of our deformations. So there's a lot of different ways we could do this. I'm going to just do this with an edit node. You can drop an edit node, or you can just select it in the viewport. But if with the edit node selected, I hit S, let me select something kind of around the edge of the mouth. I'll go T to transform, and you can see I can now move this point. However, I want more of a soft transform. So if I scroll on the mouse wheel, it'll automatically check on the soft radius option here. Now I have fall off. If I go use mirror, I can mirror it across the Z-axis. For this first deformation, I think I want a puckered lip or something like that. So I might just hit M in the viewport, change the handle alignment to world. That way I'm just going in and out. If I turn on the material just to kind of get a better idea of how this is actually set up. And then maybe I rotate it a little bit, hit R. And you can also change this soft type. I do like cubic, but you can actually play with some of these tangent angles. One other thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hop up to the object level real quick and set up just like 2 quick distant lights, just so when I have the normal lighting mode selected, I actually have something to show me shadows and I get a better idea of what I'm actually doing. Make 2 distant lights, Alt drag this, hit M, change to world, and then I'm just going to rotate this one a little bit, just have them pointing different directions, kind of like down angled. And then I'm going to turn them off so you don't see the visualization for them. I'm going to hop back into the rig, save, escape. Now you can kind of get a better idea of how this is looking. Okay, so that's pose 1. I'll call this, I'll do lips in, or I'll do lip squeeze. That sounds better. All right, lip squeeze. I think that's how you spell squeeze. I don't know. Okay, and then just gonna drop down another edit. Let's do the same thing. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna grab the same exact guy. Actually, I'm just gonna drag this out because I want the same position. And instead this time of squeezing things in, I'm going to drag it out and back. And this is gonna be kind of like a flattened. I really don't want to move this up or down too much. Zero that out. And also zero out any rotations I did. Put this out and wide. I think that might be good. Call this lips wide. And let's do a blend shapes just to see how we're looking so far. Rest is going to be 0. Lip squeeze is going to be 1. Lips wide is going to be 2. And if you update channel names from inputs, they'll show up here. So if I squeeze, again, I hate this. I don't know why. You see how it's still showing this old mesh. It's not actually there. It's OpenGL. Again, and if I switch back and forth animation editor to scene view, it reloads the OpenGL. So now squeeze the lips, we can widen the lips. Let's add a few more. Let's do one with the mouth corner up. So you definitely can get something kind of out of this. I'm gonna go ahead and just call this lips up. And update channel names from inputs. So I can blend in between these. They didn't used to have this in like Houdini 18, at least I don't remember. In Houdini 18 and 17.5 and all that stuff, but you can actually go down on blend shapes, like invert the look of it. I don't even really need necessarily to make an up. I can just go into the negatives on this lip up. And I'm just holding middle mouse button and dragging. So let's take this a little bit further and show you some of the joint stuff you can do in here. I'm going to turn off the texture. I'll go into flat wire shaded mode. We want a little bit of control over like the roll of these lips. I'm going to go ahead and drag these over here. And I'll clean this up real quick. Close that off for right now. And now I'm going to make another null. Call this rest. And now here, I want to create a skeleton. So we can do this a few different ways. I'm actually, since we already have just a good chunk of points here, I'm going to just select these. These two guys, I think, actually is really all I need. So I'll just delete. And I'll do delete non-selected. Again, OpenGL is stupid. And I don't know why that's going to happen all tutorial, apparently. But now I just have these two isolated points. And I'm going to do a rig doctor on them. But I'm actually going to do that after I give these names. So I'm going to drop a name node, hit P, change it to points. And then I believe, make sure. So this is, yes, that was the center one. This was the one that was in the center. I'll call this lip upper mid. And I'll then select the one, call this lip upper R. And then the rig doctor is going to initialize the transforms. It could initialize the names if you didn't give them any, but we just gave them some, so we should be fine. So lip upper mid and lip upper R. And then we can do a skeleton mirror. And on this, first off, we only really want to mirror this guy. So we can change this R to an L. So now it's lip upper L and lip upper R. So we can distinguish the two of them. Then if we run another mirror, we can mirror these guys and we're going to mirror them down. I think that's going to put it way down there. So we need to bring this origin up and let's kind of visualize where these actually are. So really all we got to do is kind of drag down this origin to get kind of somewhere where lip would be. I also want that middle one still. And I don't want to find tokens there. I will go ahead and I'll go to middle. I'm going to change upper to lower. Now we have lip lower mid, lip upper mid, lip upper R, lip lower R. And then we'll use a rig pose. And we want to push these back a little bit. We want these to be inside of the lip a little bit. So we'll go ahead and we'll select all of them. And we'll just push these guys back. And this is just so we can rotate the lips. We want the pivots to be inside the lips. So maybe I even move these up a little bit. Just think about where, and you can always change this later, but just think about kind of where you would want the lips rotating around. And maybe we want one more joint in here. So let's also do a blast. I think I'm gonna grab, I think actually right there is probably good. So I'll just take this single point. I'll name it lip upper corner R. Okay, so we'll do rig doctor, initialize transforms, and then we'll do a skeleton mirror. So we'll make sure we select the point, and then all we really gotta do is change R to L, make sure that this is all looking good. In this one, we really don't need to move back. So we can just join these together now. All right, I didn't do anything crazy. I just renamed some stuff and colored it and made it look pretty. I didn't change anything on the nodes. So, okay, so now all we need to do is bind the skin to these joints. Okay, so now if you've watched other KineFX videos, including mine, your first step here to capture the skin might be to drop down a bone capture lines. However, we don't have any lines. We have 0 bones at all. All this is joints. And we want to keep it that way. So we need to drop down a bone capture proximity. And this is actually going to be the only node we need. So if we drop down a null, just to keep this network clean, and plug it into the rest geometry, I'll call this in rest skin, and plug geometry capture in there. And then I plug our joints in here. Immediately it updates and gives us these weightings. And it's pretty fast. So I'm going to drop down a bone deform and plug in the rest mesh, the rest skin. Yeah, move this over here. Just keep this network clean. And then output of this is going to go in rest. And we'll do a rig pose. Immediately, if I start rotating stuff, you can see that we have weights here. They're not very good weights, but they're weights. Now, one thing I do want to have is I want to have correct orientations of these joints. And I think the easiest way we can get that done is by creating a kind of root skeleton, which actually we probably should have done a little bit earlier, but I mean, it doesn't matter. So let's do a skeleton, and then I'll turn on the construction plane. I'll do construction plane handle, hold control to get the snapping here, and then I'll just drag that up. And I'm going to change this mode from surface to, I believe it is freehand. And now I'm just going to put joint at the base of the neck, and then I'll put a joint where the top of the jaw would be, and actually turn tweak mode on, move it down a little bit. I think the jaw would probably be like right here, and then I'll go bottom of the jaw and then out. And I'll hit enter to jump into the modify mode. Call this root, call this head, call this jaw start. Put a little space in there. If you put a space in the name, it'll automatically do the underscore if you're in the skeleton node. Jaw end. Okay, so I'm just gonna go construction plane, and I'm gonna go revert to default, and then I'm gonna turn it off. So here is our skeleton for the kind of root, and I want to merge this in with what we got right now. So put this into the merge, and on the merge, I want this to come first because I want these to be the earliest points. If I have it plugged in at some weird order, then you'll see these points are now 2, 3, 4, 5. I want them to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So we get that by just making sure it's the first in this order, and then I'll keep things going like that. Okay. And now we want a reparent joints node. Turn this on, and all we got to do here is select the plus, and then we can grab all of these points, and then we want to parent them probably to the head joint, and that's going to give us a nice orientation where it's going to point directly out, and we can rotate around that axis. Okay, so I'll do a reorient joints node. Now you can see that all of our joints are pointing basically straight forward. All right, awesome. I'm just going to clean this up super fast. Plug the rest of these guys in. Should be seeing colors in here. Oh, I think, hold on, there's already a color attribute. Let me just delete color, come back down here. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why that does it sometimes, but I guess if it already has a color attribute, then it uses that. But so now you can see the weighting here, and if I clear this out, do some like edits here, you can see that it's pretty bad. It's pretty terrible right now. So first thing we can do is change this max influences, which is going to basically mean how many different joints can influence the same area. So previously too, you'll see we get these really defined areas. If we keep going up, you start getting more blended together areas. That's not necessarily exactly what we want. I mean, probably a little bit of it, maybe 5 is fine. But the big thing is going to be this drop off. So if I drag this drop off down, eventually you'll see we disappear. If I start pushing it back up a little bit, we can limit the area of effect this is going to have. And that's nice because now we're already a lot closer to getting this to look decent. Maybe a little bit more. Or maybe I just do 5 and 2 for this actually right now. So yeah, so I'll force recapture just to make sure that it did it. And then lastly, I'm going to orient a bunch of these guys in kind of weird positions so I can really see their effect on geometry. I don't really want to move them too much. I kind of want to just rotate for the most part. I will move these edges out though. Okay, so that looks terrible. But now we're going to use a capture layer paint. And we can plug this guy in. And in the third input for rig pose, we're going to plug in our bones just so we can see them. And we're going to do visualize selected capture region and layer final. All right, and so now that we have this visualized, I might want to also go ahead and drop down a visibility node. Since we're working on the mouth, figure it's probably a good idea to isolate the lip bottom. Okay, for this I also might blast away anything that has the word upper in it. So I'll go at name equals star upper star, and should be a point group. And now we can bounce back and forth between the top edges and not. Go back down to this capture layer paint. Now I can start visualizing stuff and painting these weights. So if I go, let's do lip corner L. So do this guy, do paint, change the opacity back down lower. Just gonna paint some values down here, and then I'll do smooth single bone. Smoothing is a lot stronger when the opacity is higher. I'm actually going to go ahead and do this on the bone deform. So you can paint with the bone deform visualize, and that can help just kind of see how things are blending together and the weights are working. I'll do lip lower L. Put some weights, and then I'll do smooth single bone. I'm doing smooth single bone because it's It's not going to override any of the other weights I've already painted. It's just going to only smooth on the bone that's on currently, which is nice because you don't interrupt some of the work you've already done. Do lower mid. All right, so that's to me. Let's do the top now. Good visibility. We need to select the lips top. All right, I think that's it for these weight paintings. And I'm going to do one more capture layer paint. And then this one, I'm just going to smooth the whole thing. Decent size brush, turn off, use connectivity, use normals. And I'm just going to go smooth, final. All right, I think that's about it. We can also change this. I like to use the dual quaternion mode. I just feel like it gives better rotations. All right, so let me clean this up real quick. So now we want to introduce back in that last layer of guides that we created up here with the deformation weights. Let's set this up down here first. So we'll do a point VOP, and the first input is going to be the rest skin. So the skin before we deform anything. And the second input is going to be coming from our bone deform. So our deformed lips. And I'm going to also just give this some setup just so we can see it when we apply it. So something like that. Okay. So now we have these. If I go to the point, if I hide all because I don't want to see all that bone capture stuff. And let's see, we have lips top and a lips bottom. And if I jumped in here and did import point attribute, you can just type the first letter of nose to get them to pop up. So I usually just type IPA and it'll pop up. So if I get this and I change the input to second input, and it's by default already set to position, I'll go mix, plug in 1, 2, and then I'll plug that input in. And this is going to blend between the deform pose and the rest pose. And now we can use something as this bias here. So we're going to do a bind, and we're going to grab, let's do lips underscore top. We'll plug this in, lips. I can't spell anything right. And now you'll see immediately that we're isolating the deformation to just that group that we painted. The one problem I have with this sometimes is this is a little bit too tight. You'll see here it's not getting around to the edge. So let's do a attribute blur, and we'll do a lips top. And now that's great. The one problem with this is if I go lips top, as soon as I start fading this out, you'll see that we actually start losing value. I think this actually might be rounding back up. Yep, auto. We'll do min max for you to visualize better. So the blur is working, but it's rolling off a lot of our full values. So areas that used to be 1 might be something like 0.5 now. So we won't get as much deformation, and that isn't exactly what we're looking for here. So the easiest way to fix this is just to change the mode on the attribute blur from Laplacian to volume preserving. And now you'll see that we retain the weights here. So I'm actually going to put these up at the top where the weights are. So plug this in here, and then just to make this easy, go $OS, and I'll do lips top. This one's going to be lips bottom. I'm also going to turn the visualizer off. What else do we got? We got eyebrows, cheeks, ears, jaw, eyelid, nose. Now we have full control over these blurs for each one of these. Put a little box around this guy. We can come back up and blend that in whenever we want. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and we're going to also bring in the lips bottom, because I do like having the option to be able to control between top and bottom. So I like having both of those fields, but for this case, we're just going to take the lips top and lips bottom and do the maximum between the two. So it's basically just going to choose anything in the whole lip. So now if I'm in here, I can control these lips, and the fall off is pretty great. And if I don't like it quite enough, I can go lips top and just add more. You also can change some of these connection types. One thing I like to do is use proximity. I think it actually works a little bit better in these situations. So I'll do maybe something like 0.01 and maybe 10, 20. And I'll put this back to the default. Do proximity 0.02 maybe. I mean, really, there's just some tweaking to get some of your weights right. All right, so now we're going to bring back in our blend shapes that we made. So we'll take blend shapes here, and we're going to, instead of having input be the rest skin, which is up here, we're actually going to have it be right after this. We capture the mesh. So give this some more space here. We want to plug in this guy here, and we'll have the blend shapes run on our rest geometry. So we can do things like, say I want to squeeze the lips together and still be able to rotate our geometry. So that's nice. You can also do a few other things. I make a little more space here. So this deformation isn't perfect. There's some stuff like right here, for example, that's kind of annoying. So if we want to clean this up a little bit, there's some stuff we can do. Some of these things can slow down your animation speed, so just be wary of that. Some of these things you might just want to turn on at the end once you're happy with your animation. But what we can do here to clean this up a little bit is we can take a point deform, and we can plug in the rest geometry. Then we can plug in the deform geometry, and then plug in the rest geometry again for the rest input. And this is going to basically be a point deformer now on your geometry using our blend shapes, which will make for usually a cleaner interpolation. We can also bring this down considerably. So maybe maximum points 10, radius 0.01, since we're at a pretty small scale. These are values that, especially the radius is a value that's going to be dependent on what you're actually using. And then we can also do a delta mush after this if we want to clean it up even more. So first input is going to be deform geometry. Second input, if I just Alt and click on this wire, I'll create a little connector and I can plug that into, that's the reference geometry, which will be the rest geometry. What this does is this tries to get rid of little collisions within itself. So if you see right here, we got some ugly collisions, and then the delta mush fixes it. But yeah, so that can help considerably with getting a better, cleaner look. And it's still pretty fast at this point. I'm gonna set this back to defaults. But again, once we start layering all this stuff together, it's going to be slower for sure. So at the moment, I'm going to put this in a box and turn these off. And we're just going to work with the standard setup right now. We got the gist of the mouth controls and deformers done. We'll go into it a little bit further later. But for now, let's do the eyebrows, because the eyebrows are pretty fun. We're going to use a wire deformer for this, actually. So we'll do a draw curve, and I'm going to throw this down and connect it to our rest post. This is coming out of the blurs that we ran over the deformation waves that we created. And then if we plug this guy in and we change the projection mode to geometry, and I'm actually gonna just go ahead and visualize the actual geometry and turn the shader on because I want to actually see where the eyebrows are. Now remember, we aren't actually just doing the eyebrows. This is like the muscle that controls the whole brow. So it isn't just going to be the eyebrow. It's going to be a little bit extended from it. But the eyebrow is definitely a good base to get the shape going. Okay. Now we're going to run this into a resample because it's probably got way too many points. Yeah, so I'm going to do resample, and I'm going to uncheck maximum segment length. I'm going to check on maximum segments. We probably only want something around maybe 20. Nothing crazy, because we're going to be actually running this into a curve solver, and we don't want to make KineFX slow down too much. Plug this into a fit. So the fit is going to basically interpolate through it and make a NURBS curve, which is what you're saying here, which is how we're going to control the curve solver, because we don't want to have to control each of these points individually. We're just going to use maybe 5 or 6. What's always a good thing to do first is to make sure that this path is actually a path. So if we check here, you can see that there is only one primitive. However, sometimes you'll have a case where maybe like this is a polywire. If I blast this out or dissolve this, and then I do solve non-selected. If I merge these two together, you might think this is one wire. This is actually 2 primitives. And if we plug this into the fit, then we're going to get different results than if we just plugged this in. So you want to make sure that whatever you're plugging in is actually connected. And if we run that into a polypath, and we do connect endpoints, you'll see that it connects inline points and makes them into one path. So now we could run the same fit over and get the same result from both of these, whereas this would cause some issues. So it's just a good idea just to get you in the habit of it. Drop down a polypath. Yeah, so that's just a heads up for working with fits. And here we probably want about 2 controllers for the front of the eyebrow, 2 for the crest, and then 1 for the temple. So if I bring this tolerance down, we get more control points, but we don't want too many of them, because if we have too many control points, then it starts to get hard to kind of control the whole thing. All right, and let's do a rig doctor. I actually think I need to put this rig doctor up here. So we do the rig doctor up here. We're going to initialize the transforms, reorient to child. I'm also going to make these a little bit smaller. Let's go lower and let's make sure that everything's being parented the right way. Actually, I actually think we're backwards here, I think. I believe this is being driven by the stroke. So I'm actually just going to draw this the other way. So if I take another stroke, I draw this time from the temple, and then I'm going to delete the first stroke we made. And then you can see now our parenting network goes from the temple as the root to the middle of the brow as the tip. Okay, we'll do the fit. We need to transfer a few things over. So you'll notice in this fit, if I go and show the name and show the transform, it has them, and it does have, you can see that it has all that stuff, but nothing's right in here. And KineFX needs a name and it needs a correct transform matrix for it to work. So we need to transfer that back over. We'll do a attribute transfer. We'll go to the fit and we'll go from the skeleton or the rig doctor. And then on this attribute transfer, all we got to do is hit this drop down. We'll go transform and then we'll do a rig doctor. And we want to just keep this initialize names on. We do not want to initialize the transforms because we just transferred those over on the attribute transfer. Okay. And now if we do rig pose, and that's going to be our controllers. And then if we do a rig attribute VOP, we can set up the curve solver. So we're going to take the first input is going to be coming from the rig doctor, which is going to be basically our eyebrow at rest. And then our second input is going to be coming from the rig pose, which is going to be our controllers. And inside, we're going to do a get point transforms. And the first input is going to be star. It's going to be everything. And then we'll do a second input also. So we have first input, second input. And then we'll do a curve solver. We'll plug in the first input, so our rest points. And then we'll plug in the second input, which is our controller points. And be wary of this control prim insert here. I don't know what the trigger is for this thing appearing and not appearing. Half the time it's there, half the time it's not for me. Maybe I'm just losing my mind, but I swear this thing pops up and then disappears in different times. You want to plug the points into the controls. Just be aware of that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do a set point transforms. And this is probably not going to work right off the bat because I think the defaults are a little bit different than what we have set up. Pretty sure that's just because we have the wrong point counts. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 breakpoints. So we want to go NURBS curve because that's what we have. We want to put it to 6. And let's also, I'm going to hide the second input and show the joint axes. I'm also going to hide the output. And I just want to see going along the curve, it looks like it's going down the Z axis. So we can say the look at axis is Z. And it looks like the look up axis is Y. So that should get us the correct orientation for this curve. And I like to change these to control when I'm doing something like an eyebrow. The difference is curve, if I am manipulating one of these control points. So let's say I start manipulating this point and I drag it up too high. If these are set to curve, then it will allow this point here to drag that point with it. If they're set to control, they're going to be kind of anchored to these points, so they won't budge from there. And I'm also going to turn on a little bit of stretch and a little bit of squash. Okay, and then I'll hop up. And so now we have a nice little curve solver out of this, which is great. But there are still a good chunk of controls on this. I like to do extra fun stuff because KineFX is cool. So I'm going to make a little bit of a secondary controller for these controls. So let's do a blast. And we'll do just the front, this little guy near the crest, and this end. We're going to do delete non-select so we can just isolate those. And then we'll do a FBIK, which is going to be full body inverse kinematics. And we'll plug both these in. And by default, it won't work. We need to change this map using setting to match by attribute. And now, if I do a rig pose, we can control this guy with just these 3. However, interpolation of it right now is pretty bad. So for one, I'm gonna pin the root. So this guy down here is gonna be pinned. So now we're actually not even getting enough. So if we go to configure, we can hit this configuration button to drop down a configuration. And I'm gonna select this brow and I'm gonna say priority 1, which is gonna mean it's gonna get solved before anything else. So this solve is gonna come first. Okay, and now next I'm gonna hit another plus. I'm going to select that kind of crest controller we have. I'm going to change this to orientation only, so we're not going to get any effect from moving the position, but changing the orientation is going to have a effect on the rest of the joints that are connected to it. I'm going to change this weight to 100. And now we can have some kind of fun, just little twisty kind of controls. All right, awesome. I'm going to clear out everything we got going on here. And then I'm going to run this back into the add and our rig pose for just the full thing if we do want to use that. So now we want to have this show up for two sides. Just organize it a little bit. All I did was just organize this a little bit. Now that we have that done, I think we want to do the other side, which is going to be pretty easy with everything mirrored down the z-axis. So let's do a skeleton mirror. Plug that in here. And then we're going to do a blast here. And one thing you'll notice before we plug this in is that if I just visualize the name, you'll see we have 0.0, which is what the standard curve is called. And then we have all these that are saying mirror_point. And that gets generated here when we leave this empty and we say replace tokens with mirror. And because of that, we can go group type points, go at name, exclamation point equals, which means does not equal. And then we'll do star mirror, star again. And that's going to delete everything that does not have mirror anywhere in the name. So you can see it blasts out all of the other side. Okay, and now I'm pretty sure that just works by default. So everything should be set up for us. Make sure that this is the same. So I believe it is. Yep, and we look good. Okay, so now all we have to do is merge these together. So I'll grab both of these, hold Alt to drop a merge, and now we're going to start actually creating the deformer. So if I go null and I plug this into our rest geometry, and then I'll take this guy and we're going to do a wire capture. And we're going to do geometry to capture, plug in the rest skin, and then wires to capture with, it's going to be this merge. However, we want to make sure that this isn't just capturing every frame. So we're going to do a stash. You could do a file save too if you're worried about file size. This is going to save it to your hip file, but these are so small that I don't think it's going to slow down saving speeds or anything. So we have the stash and we have it plugged into our wire capture, and things look crazy right now because they're way too big. So if we hit P to bring up the parameters here, you can see visualize type. If we change it to single primitive, then we'll start to be able to see the weights. But again, they're way too big. So if we go over to capture, we'll see min, max weight, and this is going to be the weight that is applied. And then this has to deal with the scale of the influence. So if I say bring this down to 0.01, we get a lot more accurate, better represented influence weights. We can go up with this a little bit. Let's see. And this is a prime example of what I was talking about with separate polypaths. I don't know what happens when I mirror this, but you can see now we have 21 primitives here. This is not a solid path. So in order to get this actually working right, I have to plug this into the polypath here. And now we only have one path, which is what we need for this. So again, I'll stash this just to update it. And now I'm getting what I was expecting I'd get on this capture. So maybe I go 2 on the lookup just to make it longer, and 0 to 1 is probably fine too. The fall off is going to be fall off, and this U range is going to control the influence along the curve. Probably don't want to do much with this, but you can if you want to. And then we'll do a wire deform. The input is going to be the output from our wire capture, and then our rest wires are going to be our stash. I'm going to move this over. So our rest wires are going to be our stash, and then our deforming wires are going to be the live merge input. That is going to allow us right off the bat to control stuff a little bit. Now it's going to look like crap at first, but what we can do here is we can change this blending mode to weighted, which is going to give us some control per line. So it's going to, like if I push this guy over, I pushed this guy over, and here you can see this kind of tension that's creating in the center there. So beyond that, let's drop down a point VOP and utilize our weights that we made. So we want to take the input rest skin, which is going to be the skin that's not deformed, and then we're going to take the skin that is deformed, and we're going to go IPA, import point attribute, and we'll go second input. We'll do a mix the current input with the second input, and we're going to mix it with, if we drop a bind, we called that attribute up here, the ones that we created, we called it, I'm pretty sure it's just eyebrows. Yeah, it's just eyebrows. So we bind eyebrows, which is going to bring in that attribute, and we're going to plug it in as the NIX control. And now we're not getting any crazy deformations outside of our eyebrow area. And there's our eyebrows. All right, so now that we have our deforming eyebrow geometry, we want to be able to apply this to, say, our mouth deforms. And we want to be able to apply it at the same time as these are all happening. So we don't want to have to plug it into the chain and have it calculate all this stuff again and do that for every movement. And we don't want to compile all these deformations. We want to almost run them simultaneously. And that'll be a lot faster and smoother. And the way we do this is by calculating the difference between what we create with this eyebrow deformation and the rest skin. And what I mean by that is we have all these points and they all match. We have a constant topology because we're not changing the topology when we deform this thing. And because of that, we know that point, say, 3290 is going to always be 0.3290. So there it is on the deformed, and there it is on the rest. And we need to get the value that is how far this thing goes from this position to this position. And we basically just get that by subtracting out the original rest skin. So to do that, we'll do a point VOP, and we'll take in the deform geometry, and we'll plug in the rest skin. If I jump into this point VOP, and then I do an IPA, import point attribute, and I say I want the input to come from the second input. So I want to pull in the position from the second input. And then by default, I have my first input as this P. So I can simply get this difference between the two of them by adding them together and making one of them negative. And for that, I want to make the rest position negative, which is coming in on our second input. So we can subtract out the mesh, the rest position from our deformations. And plug that into position. And now go down to 0. You'll see that this is the difference of our points. And you'll see every point that does not deform is cluttered down here at 0 because there's no changes in the deformation. So now that we have this isolated, we can reapply this to our other deformed geometry. So now that we have this difference here, we can take this, I'll call this difference, and then we can take this, do a point VOP, and come down to our blend shapes we have down here. And this is our lip pose. And all we need to do is take this and just add our difference to it. So we can take this and we'll go IPA, and we'll say from the second input, add position. And there we go. There we have it right back. So I move these around. I can adjust deformations at that level, and I can adjust deformations at this level, and nothing has to recook down the network. It's very fast and everything's there. The only thing you might need to do is recalculate the normals. And the reason for that is just because we're only copying over the position. We're not recalculating any normals. So those normals are likely still staying the same. And instead of plugging this in on the blend shapes, I would plug this in at the end of whatever deformation is happening. So that would be after we mask the lips out. So I will just plug that in as a deformed position. And then we want to take the difference that we generate up here on our eyebrows and plug that into input 2. And there we go. We're fully able to control both at the same time, and it's very fast. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean up this network a little bit. Okay, so let's start talking about how we're going to do these cheekbones. We're going to do this almost in the same way we did the eyebrows. This is going to use a curve deformer. So we're going to drop down a stroke, or maybe I think it's a draw curve actually is the easier one to use. It's because it shows you projection geometry and all that stuff. And I'm going to move this in a little bit closer. I'm also going to hit Shift S just to get out of that curved wireframe because they're getting long at this point. So I'll do draw curve, and then projection, I'll do geometry. Hit enter. So for this curve, we want to go from the outer side of the head to the cheekbone, and then up around the inner eye. That's going to be good enough because I'm going to be resampling all this stuff anyways. So I'll do resample, and I feel like, yep, OpenGL messed up again. So I'm going to just resample this to maybe 20, and we're going to do basically the same setup that we did before. In fact, I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this. Just plug this in. And in this guy, we need to do some extra stuff here. So for one, we need to drop a rig doctor because I think I forgot to copy that. So this guy goes here, and then we're going to initialize transforms, reorient to child. I honestly think that's going to work by default. Yeah, it does. However, that's really not what we want. Let's see. So we got 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. That's fine. Well, actually, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's get this down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 6. Let's see if we can get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See if changing this down to 3 doesn't change it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, cool. So we got 6 now. All right, cool. So that is our cheek. And I think we can just copy like most of this setup, honestly. That input into the merge. And I'm going to have to restash this. Stash input. Make sure I didn't deform anything. Stash that again just to make sure. And let me see if, see, where's this rest skin going? Okay, yeah, no, rest skin is going to have to go into, oh, and then this is calculating the, this is going to be calculating the difference. So there's nothing that we did right there, but if I turn the points on, you can see they're all right down there at the center. All right, I'm just going to look at the wire deform for right now. And let's look at the wire weights. I think I'm going to make this bigger for this. Maybe look up 2. Radius 0.03 or something, maybe. All right, let's see kind of what we're working with here. And I'm going to turn back on the flat wire shaded. And animation editor and back just to refresh the OpenGL. And let's do a little bit of deformation. And I want to, instead of eyebrows, I want to mask this with cheeks, because that's our cheek attribute. So let's blur this a little bit to cheeks, and I'm going to change the mode to proximity. I'm going to go 10, 20, see what does 50 do. Maybe I do 20 on the max neighbors, maybe 0.05, 0.02. I'm going to keep it 0.1 actually. All right. And maybe turn the cutoff frequency down. Okay. Of course, that messes up OpenGL, so I have to go to animation editor and back to refresh it. And now I'm going to clear this out. I'm just going to manually edit some of this. Oh, crap. There's probably too many curves on these now. How many curves do I have? I actually definitely have too many control points. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I need to change the curve order to 8. Probably gonna have to do that on the other one too. Okay, just make sure that it is 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, okay. And then I'm also gonna have to just restash this because that's gonna update the rest position for sure. So now I can kind of get some cool little upper cheek motion. Okay, So how about instead of this whole setup here, delete these guys, the FBIK setup, and in here, we're just going to do some soft transforms. So hit escape, hit select, and select this center point. And with it selected now, I can scroll on the mouse wheel and just kind of pull it up. And let's see if I disable this for right now. I'm going to restash this just to make sure everything is right. And so now, I'm going to go check out what we're doing on the cheeks over here. Oh, cheeks. Let's see, I might smooth these a little bit. Might be too much. Brush, opacity 0.2. Paint a little bit on the inside here. And now we can come back a little bit. All right, cool. Let's see how that's working right now. I think I'm gonna do a little bit more weight painting right around the base of the cheek or the nose. So I'm just erasing, and then I'm gonna smooth. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Definitely better. Cool. So those are our cheeks. And when we promote everything up to an HDA, we'll make the controls a lot nicer. So don't worry about it too much for right now. So we'll calculate the difference and apply it to the rest of the deformations. So we calculate the difference in the cheek deformer, and then we want to plug it in down here right after the deformed. So I believe we plug the wire deformed in first, and we're gonna have this plug in after it's already been deformed. So the first input is then going to be the wire deformer, and then the second input is going to be this calculated difference on the cheeks. And then just make sure that this is correct. So we should be able to get the cheek displacement. It's looking good. Yep, no difference. And then we can plug this into the calculate difference here. And this guy's going to plug in down here. And we should now have, just make sure all these work together. Should now have the ability to edit eyebrow and cheek and blend shapes and rigged up mouth. All right, awesome. So now I'm just going to zero everything out. And I'm just going to clean up this scene real quick. Okay, so now that we have the cheeks done, and I just kind of clean this up, we only have the eyelids, the jaw, and the ears, the nose left. So those should be pretty quick since those aren't super technical. I'm just going to do the nose real quick, which is basically as simple as just some blend shapes. So it's going to do like 2 probably. If I drop an edit and I go ahead and I select, see this guy, T, give it a little bit of soft radius, and then use mirror. To make kind of a inwards nose. Okay. Do blend shapes. And I'll just see, I'll switch these because I want the rest position to be 0. If we really want to, we can even do a point pop and then mask it with our weight painted attribute we made earlier. Call this rest in. And I think by now you guys get the memo. Import point attribute. Let's do here second input mix. All right, this guy's in, and we do a bind, and I call this nose. And I plug this guy back in, and there we go. I'll call this nose suck. All right, there's nose suck, and then there's, let's see, what do we want to do here? Enter. I'm going to call this flare. And I really think that's about all you need for a nose. I don't think you need a ton of blend shapes. Update names. All right, pretty easy for the nose. All right, let's do the ears real quick. And for the ears, we're just going to do a joint setup. Let's just take 2 points, take one at the base of the ear, and I'll take one at the end of the ear. And I'll delete these, and I'll delete non-selected. I do not want to ruin the entire chain. So I'll just keep those. I'll drop an add. I'll do by group to get the polyline there. Do a rig doctor, create names, initialize transforms, and I'll orient to child. And I'll call these R here. And then I can mirror, skeleton mirror, and start. We're going to replace R with L. And now we should have L ear and R ear. Nice. And now we're going to do a capture. I might just do capture region, honestly. Bone capture proximity, that's what I meant. Geometry capture, this guy. Here's our bones. And if I'm just going to take this weighting down, 0.1. All right, and then do a bone deform this guy. And then we want the rest points. Just going to come out of the rig doctor. Actually, the skeleton mirror, my bad. And then same thing for the deform points. I'll do a rig pose. Oh, I hate that. I hate that these are backwards. Okay, we'll drop a sort first. And we're going to reverse the point order. And that should fix it. All right. Yeah, okay. So dropping the sort before the rig doctor and the add connects points from like 0 up. So if you had like 10 points and it was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would connect them in the order of their point count. So it's using that value along the curve to give it the parented constraints. So flipping this sort, if I drop the sort and I do reverse point sort, I am reversing the point numbers here. So you see 0 and 1, 1 and 0. And then that directly influences the parenting hierarchy of the rig doctor. Okay, so now you have controls for your ears. See how good they are. They're not very good. That's fine. We can just do a capture layer paint. And this one will be quick. Just going to do smooth final. Again, I mean, you could take your time with these ears, but how often do you really animate ears? It's nice to have them, but it's not worth losing sleep over. Okay, so there are your ear controls. And let's do the eyelids. Now, you could go into a lot of depth with the eyelids if you want. I'm not going to, just because I feel like this tutorial is already probably pretty long. So, if you guys are dying to do in-depth eyelids, we can do that another time. But I'm just going to do some simple ones for right now. And I'm just going to create this input ears. With this guy selected, I'm going to go ahead and select just like a top point on this eye. I'm going to hit R. And then on this guy, do not want to bring all of those in. I'm going to go to the pivot transform. And I'm going to push this back a little bit, kind of around where the center of the eye would probably be. And I'm going to rotate this around until the eye is shut. And keep using the mouse wheel to change the soft radius. And then I can also play with this cubic tangent angle if I want. Probably something more along those lines. And then I'll do use mirror. Maybe not. See if I also select this guy's. That's not bad. The bottom eyelid does come up a little bit, so I'll do something like that. And then I'll do another edit. I'm going to do this on another edit node just so. Because if you keep making edits on different points, it will use the same node and just kind of override itself. But then you can't go back and edit that data if you need to. So I'm going to rotate around this guy. And then add kind of the similar point into that selection. Same thing, do pivot transform, push it back just a little bit, maybe push it up a little bit, and then scroll on the mouse wheel to get the fall off. And it's okay if we deform a little bit over the intended kind of area because we have that mask field. All right, we can fix this with maybe a delta mush. So these are our blend shapes for the blink. I'm going to do no eyelids in. That's our kind of our blink. And we'll do point up. We'll take the rest and we'll plug in the deformed. And same thing we've been doing the entire goddamn course. We'll take the position from the second input, do a mix, and position, bind, and we'll bring in the, I believe it was just eyelids. I don't know if there was a space. Let me check. Eyelids, no space. Okay. And that is going to be the bias, and that goes into the position. And we get that as opposed to that, which is nice. Okay, let's run a delta mush on this just to deform. I'm actually going to do the delta mush down here. So we plug the deform geometry into the first input and then the rest geometry into the second. And this should give us a little bit of a push from the overlaps that we get. Cool. All right, and I think that sums up the eyelids. Let's move on to the jaw. And for this, it's pretty simple. I believe we already have a skeleton set up for this purpose. Where's my skeleton for this guy? Okay, so I might just copy this, paste it up here, and we'll do a bone capture lines, capture these guys, and then we'll do a biharmonic capture and a tet embed. So we went to inputs. I'm gonna drag out this null here, call this jaw input skin. I'm gonna go inputs polymesh, and then we want to plug the additional curves in here. And by default, I think it's gonna try and oversize this. I'm actually gonna bring that down to maybe 0.2. And we'll do capture geometry. We'll do skin geometry. And I believe that's good. Okay, let's do a capture layer paint. We're in the home stretch of this, and then we can actually start setting up the HDA. All right, so capture layer paint, and then we do a bone deform just so we can see what's actually happening, and then we'll plug the skeleton in here. Okay, so skeleton goes in both the rest and deforming because we don't have any deforming right now. We do a rig pose, and let's just see what is hooked up right now. So this is how we're going to be controlling the jaw, and of course nothing happens. All right, let's paint it on then. So let's do jaw. Really, I mean jaw end is probably what we just want to do. Do paint, and I will just quickly paint this on. I'm also probably going to use the mirror function. So go capture paint, and then I just turn on symmetry, reflective, and make sure it's going down the z-axis. Select jaw end. Change this to dual quaternion because I just think the rotations there work a little better. All right, let's now do the whole point VUP thing that I've done like a billion times. So input rest, deformed input, second input, and then IPA, import point attribute, second input. We go mix, first input, second input, bind. I believe this is just called jaw, into the bias, that into the output position. All right. And we get something terrible like that. So let's go back to our jaw weight and just paint that in a little bit better. And of course, OpenGL wants to show two of these things. And here's our jaw. Let's paint on a little bit more. All right, that's fine. We're not really going to be stretching this down a ton. We could take it further if we wanted to. And if we really want to have more control over this, we can go ramp parameter here and make this a spline. Call this ramp jaw. We can call this remap jaw weight. And kind of get a more solid. There we go, that's fine. Then maybe I make these just kind of the smoother curves. So shift click all of them and then maybe Catmull ROM, visor, that's fine. All right, so that is our jaw. Sweet. All right, so now last step here is to connect these together. So to avoid doing this a billion times, and I'm probably gonna speed past this anyways, just because we've already done this, I'm gonna use the point differencing method I've been using. So I'm just gonna make a template for that. I made a little HDA. It's called Easy Apply Difference. You can also just find it in the Easy tab under Rigging. But once you install this, obviously. So it has 3 inputs. The first input is the geometry that we want to append the deformations to. And so that's going to be these ears deformed, and we want to pull from this nose deformed. So we have a deform geo rest and a deform geo deformed. So the deform geo rest is going to plug in from this rest in, and the deform geo deformed is going to plug in from this nose deformed. And if I edit the ears, I also have full control over this nose. And just keep going with this. So we can just keep, say, do the eyelids, and then we're going to take the deformed geo is going to be this guy, and then the rest geo is going to be coming from this input. And now we can still get the ear and the nose and the eyelids. And let's just copy this out one more time. We'll take this, do this as a jaw, and then deformed is going to run into this guy, and then rest. I don't think it really matters where I'm plugging the rest. I think all these rests are the same, but let's line these up. This is going to make my network tree look really ugly, but it's worth it because it's easy. Okay. And now that that should be everything. Make sure this works. Yep. Nice. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and reset all of these to their defaults. And now I just have to go and merge these deformations with the rest of the rig. So I have to put this in here. So if I go right before this calculate deformation, then I do rest, that can be that guy, and then deformed, it's going to be pulling from that last easy apply. And all we got to do is stick this now in the first input here. Or actually, no, my bad. In the second input here, because we want this to replace the deformed cheeks. All right, and let's check out and make sure everything's working down the whole line. Nice. Great. Let's check the cheeks. Working good. Let's make sure we still have all of our jaw and blink ear. I mean, I think all these are good now. I did check all these. And let's make sure, lastly, that this joints on these lips work. And everything looks good. All right, it looks like we're all set up. So now I'm going to clean this up, and then in the next one, we're going to start talking about how to set up this as an HDA. All right, let's wrap this up and do this last part, which is going to be setting up the controllers and the HDA and the benefits that includes. So the benefits are that, unlike just working in a network like this here, which is totally fine, there's definitely benefits where all of your controls are kind of scattered around everywhere. If you have an HDA with KineFX, you can promote whatever controls you want just to the HDA itself. So it's all just there for you when you are in the state mode. And that's great because it lets you control everything without jumping around the network or searching for things. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to make an output here at the very bottom. And I also want to do one more little point VOP. Then I'm going to apply everything that we have to this surface geometry. I'll just do import point attributes, and I'm literally just going to take the position from the second input. Or actually, I want to take the position from the second input here, and I actually want the first input to be this first kind of node here. And I want that because along the way here, in several different situations, we create captured weights, and since we're already working on a rig that has captured weights, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to override them and then have to do any weird stuff when we hop back up in this network. Because remember, we are working entirely still in here. And actually, I think I have a output node. Oh yeah, I have an output node up here. Okay, I'll use this output node. So if I plug this in, now we're guaranteed that we're keeping all of our captured weights, but we're getting all of our deformation that we make inside of this face deformer. We also want to merge in If I drop a merge, we want to merge in that other end of that split. So we'll go up here and we'll select the split. And now we have everything here. We might have to do a little bit more on getting some of this geometry to follow our face rig, but we'll get to that in a minute. And I think that's good. I'll hop up, and just in case something goes awry, I am going to save a backup of this file. So let's go File, Save As, and I just save this as backup. So I now can go to the face rig here, and I can right click and I can go Create Digital Asset, and it's going to ask us where we want to put it. And I don't want to put it in I'm just going to put it in this hip folder. So I'm just going to put it here. I'm going to call this rigs. I'm going to call this face rig. Call this face underscore rig here, and we'll accept. All right. Input is going to be regio. Apply. I also don't want this to have to calculate every single time we do this. Which actually, I think it's doing a pretty good job of not doing that, so that's fine for right now. But let's get this going. So first things first, I want to promote a lot of my controllers. If I hop down in here, you'll see these rig poses. If I was to go into their type properties, you'll see that on the node, their default state is KineFX rig pose. And that is important because we need to have that on our HDA. We might even tweak it. So let's apply. Probably going to get some errors because it doesn't love when you just have rig poses inside of this thing. It does look like it's working for the most part though. So the one problem with this is that it's importing everything. It's importing all of our rig poses. And we don't want that. And we also want to have access to our controls up here. If we are editing things, we want to be able to undo them. This part gets a little bit confusing. I'm going to try and just do this in a way where you can just follow along exactly. So in order to get specific rig poses to show up and specific rig poses not to show up, we have to edit this state code. And in order to do that, we have to get the code, the Python script, from Houdini. So if you dive into let's do local C, program files without the x86 thingy. Let's do side effect software. Go Houdini 18.5.596. We'll go packages. Then we want to go into KineFX and we'll go ViewerStates. Big old. Here, I'll copy this and put it on Patreon or something. And in here, we want to snag this rig pose Python. And if we double click to open it up, you'll see we get this state. And we can copy this. And if we go into the type properties, we can delete this state. With the state deleted, we can hop over to interactive, and there's this tab called ViewerState. If we go ahead and click new, we just go blank, accept. We can Control A and Control V, everything we just copied from this rig pose. Now it's gonna throw some errors if we were to apply this right now, because by default, it's going to change our node's default state to face rig, because it's what we just created. But then we completely deleted everything and we pasted in this script for the KineFX rig pose. So we have to change 3 things in this script. The things we have to change is if we hit this search bar, we need to change the name of this viewer state. It needs to be face rig. And so in interactive on the viewer states, the quickest way to get to this, in my opinion, has been literally searching the name of this state. So KineFX underscore rig, and let's just find next. And it took us right to it, the KineFX rig pose, and our default state is called face rig. So we need to paste that in there. We can hit apply, accept, and now it should work like a rig pose. I hit escape and then enter again to activate the handle. You'll see everything's working as it should be. Now we got to go back into type properties, and we have to change what it picks up as a compute rig pose. And we can find these lines of code by searching keywords results equals set. And there should only be one line of code that matches this, and it should take you right to where the pose nodes are. And this is the line of code that we need to edit. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this else if statement right there. And then right here, we need to change this to n.node and then parentheses and then compute rig pose 1, which is the inside node that's actually setting up these controls. And I'm going to delete this type because I don't really want for it to search for KineFX nodes. And we want to call this, I'll call this promote control. All right, and I think that should be good. And it's probably going to yell at us because we don't have any nodes in here called promote control at the moment. But if we hop down and we create a rig pose, and we go promote control, hit enter. In the viewport, you'll see we get our controls up at the top level. You can get this through the compute rig pose also. That's the interior. That's what's actually powering the rig pose in the first place. But the issue I ran into, I was struggling to promote the controls locked, which is something that I definitely like to do for some controllers. For example, this right here, this one, moving it does nothing. So it's kind of annoying that you can even have that option. If you're handing this rig off to somebody else, then they don't know what's going on here when they start moving things around and nothing happens. So it's really nice to be able to lock those. So we're going to use a little workaround I have where I just use rig poses and promote the attributes. If I go type properties and I go over to the parameters, and I'll keep this right here, and I'm going to zero out everything here. I also, before anything else, I really don't care for these end joints when I'm messing with this rig pose. Really the only thing that I wanted to do here was make a controller for the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of isolate that guy. And that's going to be happening right here. And we're going to do a skeleton blend. I'm going to go all the points and then just the single point. And we'll make sure that we only want to blend that point in. And then we can run that back into this guy. Make sure this is all set up right. All right, awesome. So now we just have this one controller that's nice and clean. And I can just promote all here and zero this out and go to my type properties. And let's see, this is right eyebrow. So I'm going to make some folders. I'll call this our eyebrow. Or hell, let's just do eyebrow. And then let's have R and L be inside of this thing. So I'll go R and I'll go hit D to duplicate and I'll go L. Okay. And this is on the full body IK. So I'm going to make a FBIK control. And I'm going to make a full control. All right. So I'm going to lock these from the get-go. Lock and lock. And I will drag this into the full body IK. And I'll call this FBIK rotation. All right. And now we can zero this out whenever we want. And we should be able to grab it whenever we want to. And so now in order to do a control geometry, we're going to need a attach control geometry. Plug this in. And then we're going to need some sort of a control geometry. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a subnet. So I just made the subnet with a few different controllers in here. Nothing crazy. And I'll copy this. And I'll do a object merge. And then export relative paths into this object. And we plug this in. And one thing about control geometry is it has to be packed and it has to have a primitive name attribute. So I'm making these and then I'm giving them primitive name attributes. Okay, so that back in. I'll call this control geo snag. And I'll make this something that I can spot easily. Something like that. And then I have to go on the attach control geometry and I have to select the joint. And then I have to pick what control geometry I want. And since this is the right side, I'm going to do box R. I'm color coding the right and the left sides just to make things easier to visualize. So now we have this control geometry that we can just select. And we can use that to control this. And I'm going to go ahead and promote this attribute. FBIK rotation. Apply, accept, and there we go. Now we're good. And one thing I don't like really is how when I select this, I have to pivot around where the actual joint is. It would be nice to be able to pivot around the actual pivot center of this. And since this joint right here is actually limited to only orientation, it does not matter if we offset this. So I'm going to go to my box R I'm going to snag this center position and go to the promote control. I'll paste values, paste values. Now I can rotate around the axis that's in the center of this box, which is just nice and clean. Okay, let's put this all into a little subnet so we can make multiple of them. Big reason why we do that is because the state viewer needs to see this promote control rig pose. It has to be named promote control. It can't be named promote control 1. And if we have them all in the same network, then they start numbering, and then you'll either have to start putting each number individually inside of the state viewer. You just put them in a subnet. It works pretty easy. I'll call this rig pose subnet. I'll make them red. Okay, copy this out. Kill the connection there. And then I'm just gonna toss this once the FBIK control over here. Go box L, and I'm just gonna put a star here. All right, and so we have these nice little color-coded controllers now.
Why don't you seem too happy? Everyone talks when you're walking. Everyone walks when you're talking. It's a shame. Why do you seem so salty? Everyone takes from the waiting. Everyone waits for the taking. It's a shame. You're the sunset in my mind. You're the sunset in my mind. Just like we're slowing down, all that you've been holding, let it go. And I don't know where we're running, but I feel we're left with nothing.
All right, now that I got done with most of the joint controllers, which is really just kind of promoting parameters and setting up some nice fun attachment geometry, now let's actually bring in the blend shapes. So if I go to type properties, and then I create a new tab, call this blend shapes. This is pretty simple as well. All you have to do is really just drag in the blend shapes here. And I'll call this lip squeeze. Call this lip stretch. Call this lip raise corners. And I'm going to actually make the range on this one -1 to 1 because I know it can go up and down. So there's those. Let's get some of the other blend shapes. So I'll make little folders for these. Go lips. And this one will be eyelids. Go blink. Ear. This is the nose. Let's get that. Simple. Nose. And we'll go nose in tail. I think it's a better name than nose sock. Nose flare. And I think that might be it for this right now. I also want to promote all of these blur groups. These just some nice numbers. And for this, I'm just gonna go to manual mode so I'm not recaching every second. And here's jaw, eyelid. Actually, I think the eyelids was pretty dialed in. We'll do 20 though. I'm gonna make an advanced tab. Call this weighting. So I'll call this blur weights. And I'll go, let's see, this is lips top, lips bottom, eyebrows, cheeks, ears, jaw, eyelids, and nose. Okay, am I missing anything? Okay. So, we have those controls now, and can control the blend shapes from up here. Last thing we might want to do is make sure that this geometry follows correctly. So we got, I do null here, and I do, let's call this following geo. Really the only thing I think we're going to need to actually make follow here is the eyelashes, because we're really not going to be moving the head much here. We're not moving the head like around or turning it. We do that on the main rig probably. This is really just for expressions. Okay, so let's go ahead and capture all of these guys, 3D connected geometry, and I'll change my mode to primitives. This is annoying, but okay. I'll invert this, and I'm just going to, and let's just do a point deform. This can be a little rough sometimes, but I think it should be fine for what this is. Mesh to deform, rest points, and then deform lattice. Okay. So maybe I actually just do all of them right here then, if I'm gonna go the point deform route. And the point deform is good, but once you start getting into denser polygons and stuff like that, or denser point counts, it starts being a little jittery if things are moving too much. I think we should be fine with this, just these eyelids, but it's just something to be aware of. We'll put this back in. Okay. Did I miss one? Yeah, I did. All right, I think I got all of them now. Yeah, that looks fine. Maybe a little bit of issues. And really, we can just fix this by probably taking down this radius a little bit and taking down these max points. It's also going to make it faster. All right, that's pretty nice. And this all goes back into the bone deform. So I can, and you would, you definitely want to animate the character's face at rest. I mean, you can get this in a way to follow, but it's gonna be annoying. I prefer to kind of animate at rest or just ignore this setup when I'm kind of working like this. Nice nose, guys. Lips, cheeks. Nice. Let's maybe push these in. I mean, you can always, still just work with it facing this direction, honestly. And there's a lot more things that we could do to this if we wanted to keep taking this further. But these are kind of the root fundamentals of how to build a actually decent face rig. Really, you probably just spend some time making some nice blend shapes. Like here, we didn't spend nearly enough time here making blend shapes with just like an edit pose and stuff like that. You really, that's how you're gonna get some great looks without doing too much tweaking. I think in here you end up doing too much, kind of just moving things around. But yeah, I think that covers most of how you would go about doing this stuff and setting up the controls and the HDAs and all that stuff. There's lots more you could do with as far as controls go. It's endless almost, especially with KineFX. You can take these things as far as you want, but I hope this series helped. Let me know if there's anything else I can help you guys kind of figure out. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching.